All right, I'm going to hit record on the other recorder. Okay, whenever you're ready, go for it.
This is Michael Stein from the Longshot Leaders podcast, and you're listening to the Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you never to piss against the wind and live life to the fullest. And when you listen to Vroom Veer, all your magical dreams will come true.
Nice. I hope so. All right, let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Mickie Kennedy, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So you are at eReleases.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
So, I for the last 26 years have been helping small businesses, entrepreneurs, and authors get publicity using press releases that we send out to the media. All of our releases go out nationally through PR Newswire, which charges like over $1,600 for a 600-word press release. But through us, it's a fraction of that price. We have a small business discount. We act as a co-op on behalf of journalists doing 10,000 releases a year.
That's amazing. I like to call that a very nice hack. You hacked that shit. We're going to get more into the superhero origin story of eReleases because it's pretty cool. But, I mean, just the headline was, back in the day, what was it, 89, right? It cost, you couldn't do a press release for less than $20,000.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah.
Who has $20,000 to say, look at me? Anyway, so good on you. You did something good for the world. So before we get into that, let's go back in time and talk about little Mickie. So where did little Mickie grow up?
I grew up in Eastern North Carolina.
Okay.
Pretty rural area.
Nice.
I grew up around fields.
Yes. Me too. I just supplant Upper Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Yeah. So you were riding your bikes and hanging around in the woods?
Yeah, dirt bikes, fishing in ponds.
I remember the dirt bikes.
Playing with turtles, anything.
Playing with turtles. Well, maybe not accident. We did a lot of killing too, and I'm not proud of it. But yes, there was animal killing.
Okay.
Not as a hobby, but yeah, I remember like somebody told me that you can use frogs for bait. And,
yes.
Yeah. So I knew nothing about that. So one of those times that I was camping, right? We found this tiny little frog and we were like, yeah, let's use him as bait. And it was the most horrifying thing I ever went through in my life because I didn't know what to do. Apparently you're supposed to stick him through the leg or something that doesn't kill them immediately.
Okay.
But, right. Or imminently.
Right.
But, we were just, going for center mass and it was not nice. And it died rather quickly and the fish didn't like it. So, just animal cruelty, really. Not proud of it, but I learned a good lesson.
Right.
Okay. So what did you like doing when you were a little kid other than running around in the woods?
I liked adventures, hanging out with my friends. When you grow up in a rural neighborhood, you don't get to choose your friends. It's just the kids that live within a few miles of you are by default your friends, whether you like it or not.
Right. Which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. Yes. I remember I grew up in like a small town. It wasn't necessarily rural. It sounds like you had like your neighbors were like miles away.
Yeah. I mean, some are a little bit closer, like a quarter of a mile away, but right. They were all pretty sparsely.
So you had to get a hefty hike just to go see a friend. or maybe you
Correct.
rode a bike or a
Right.
mini bike.
Now,
Or something.
we lived right next to a convenience store that my family owned.
Okay.
I think once I was in the sixth grade, my father bought it. He was an electrician. And so he bought that. And my mother sort of ran it during the day and he ran it in the evenings. So people tended to come to me because I was close to the store and I could get us free soda and chips and stuff.
Yeah. Nice. That's a good in.
Right. Yeah.
You just like me for my soda.
Yeah.
Hell, I'll take it when I know it exactly what you mean. So yeah, I remember like my street, there was kids like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 houses had kids like about my age or my brother's age. And we were like 3 years apart. So there was always like, we made up games, right? Like, and they were very, obviously you play tag and freeze tag, but I remember we would play like $6 Million Man. That was a game.
Great.
We made it
Yes.
up. We played Lost in Space. That was a game. We made it up. Yeah, it was basically we're pretending like we're a TV show, but
Sure.
yeah, fun stuff. And I don't think kids get to do that these days.
No, I think with everybody having a phone and access to the internet,
Right.
I don't think children today know what it's like to be bored and to
they know.
explore things.
They know. Being bored is a healthy state, I think. It is. It's not like this thing to be avoided, right? You should
Right.
you should use it as like a cue to say, "Oh, I have to get off my ass now."
Right.
Not doom scroll yet again.
Right.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about like how kids these days don't get those kinds of experiences.
Right.
So what sort of things did you ever get in trouble? Not in a real way, like where you went to jail, but maybe like maybe not get in trouble, but hurt yourself, or just something that kids can't do nowadays.
I mean, I had a dirt bike and I
Sure.
broke my kneecap by sliding on some mud and
See? Yes. You couldn't do that
the
now.
motorcycle landing on your
Right.
knee. And
Right. Did you have to go
I
to
was
the
always
hospital,
burning
or-
myself wearing shorts on the motorcycle and
Okay.
had this
Yep.
hot exhaust. So
Yes.
I was always,
I remember that.
I always had
Yeah.
scabs or walked funny because my thigh was melted
Burnt.
against metal. Yeah.
we had a series of mini bikes when I was a kid. They're great. I still have a scar here on my chin from wiping out on a mini bike in somebody's backyard. And the brake handle did one of these things as I fell. Yeah. Not as bad though as yours. My goodness.
Right.
Did you have to go to the hospital for any of these injuries, or were these just
for the broken kneecap, I did, but there wasn't a lot they could do because there's a
Right.
kneecap and it's kind of floating. And so they just sort of put it in some Velcro metal thing where it was like a cast, but I could take it off for baths and things like that. But
Did it hurt like a mo?
It hurt a lot, and it's always bothered me. Sometimes it pops and locks, and
yikes.
it's not the same shape as the other kneecap.
Lovely. Okay. Good to know. But it's a good story.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't bother you too much these days.
No, not too much.
You can still get around.
Right.
Like I have a lingering injury on my shoulder from ill-advised high five that didn't work out. And that was at work. So
Wow.
yeah, the story went like I was trying to do the high five. We missed the first attempt. And on the flail second attempt, he hit my thumb really, really hard. And
Right.
it jammed my thumb. But it also like hyperextended my shoulder, my right shoulder. And then, thinking nothing happened and it was just my thumb, I went and spent the whole weekend on wave runners at a lake. And when I got to the office on Monday, I tried to salute an officer because I was in the Air Force and you have to salute sometimes. And I got
Right.
about here and I was like, oh, good morning, sir. Turns out
Right.
I had what did they call it? Occipital tendinitis. Doesn't sound good.
Sounds serious.
Well, it was, weeks of physical therapy, and it still hurts. And when I go to see doctors now, they just say, well, you could have surgery, but, you're not Brett Favre, so we don't recommend it.
Okay.
But I can't throw axes. I can't golf. Anything I do that is like more than ordinary kind of like screwing around is like it's just going to hurt. So that's okay. I just say no when people invite me to the axe throwing event.
Yeah.
Okay. So like you grow up and I take it you eventually go to college.
I do. I go to Greenville, North Carolina, and attend East Carolina University, which it's considered more of a party school.
Yeah.
It was the only school my best friend from high school got accepted into.
Perfect.
So I chose that, though I could have gone to better schools.
It's all right.
And
I like that choice because you wanted to be with your friend.
right. But I was immediately taken into the honors program there. And
Okay.
I really love that because the classes were very small, like usually 8 to 12 students. And
Okay.
the teachers were teaching it because they loved it. And
Right.
it was a very great experience. I got really some of the best education. And I think that if I had gone to Chapel Hill or some of the other places I was accepted at, I'm not sure that I would have stood out the way I did at a party school.
It's the fish pond kind of theory, right?
Right.
You would have been the little fish in the big pond, and now you were the big fish in the little pond. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. That's a good choice. I like that choice.
Right.
So what did you study?
I studied English literature and I ended up getting a double major with anthropology.
Hence the skulls in the background. Sorry,
Yeah.
faux skulls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anthropology. That's amazing. Wow. So obviously not the first thing that's going to get you a job, but what did you do after you graduate with these very creative and scientific degrees?
So I got and pursued a Master's of Fine Arts in Northern Virginia at George Mason University, pursuing an MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry.
See, so you still don't want to get a job.
Right. My career plan was to wait tables after I graduated. It really was. I was like, I was going to have a little bohemian life, wait tables, write poetry. And I did wait tables as I was going to grad school. And then after I finished up, I did a summer of waiting tables and just realized being on your feet 10, 12 hours a day for a shift and doing that 4 or 5 times a day, it's taxing. You don't feel
Yes.
You don't feel like reading and writing after that. So I transitioned to a safe office job. And so I got hired at a telecom research startup in DC as employee number 3. And one of the things that the owner was wanting to get off his plate was writing press releases and says, oh, you have a writing background, write press releases. And so I did.
That's a completely different gig. You have to go learn how to do that. But yeah, good for you.
Right. So, and I sent them out, nothing happened. And he goes, yeah, press releases don't really do anything. And yet I was spending an entire day programming a fax machine and sending out these press releases using his Rolodex. And I'm like, I didn't take that as an answer. And so I started reading the trade publications and newspapers. And the one thing I realized is we're really great at publishing data, but we weren't really telling the story around the data.
Right.
And so they had put together a press release for Caribbean telecom traffic that we were getting ready to release. And I said, hey, what's the story here? One country stood out. I can't remember the name of it, but it's not even a recognizable country, but yet it had more telecom traffic to and from the United States than basically all the others combined. And I found out that it was the center for 1-900 numbers, which were popular at that time.
Jeez, what are those?
And most U.S. calls, when you called a 1-900 number, were rerouted through this country.
Okay.
And so I put together that in more of a story format, still had the data points. And it was a big difference. We got picked up by Financial Times, The Economist, which were the 2 international publications. We got picked up by the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and 3 telecom trade publications. And I just said, I think I figured this out. And so I started to do more story-based press releases that had information for journalists to create a story arc. Because if you read anything, a great story generally follows a story arc.
Right.
And
You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yes.
right.
A
And
structure.
right. And, to this day, the most common press release I get is a product launch release. And it's here's the product being announced in the first sentence or paragraph. And here's a list of features. And here's a page to learn more about it. And there's not a lot there to put a story together. And so I try to educate customers to, hey, let's put a use case study in there. Someone who had a problem, what was it? Usually with, they were losing 4% a year, and they used your program for software solution for 90 days, and they're forecast to have a 7% profit this year for the first time. That's an actionable result. Get a quote by them about what it was like incorporating and using your product. That's more of a story, and a journalist can build that into a story that talks about your product launch, but in the context of a story. It's gives them a story to work with.
Do most of the work for them, and then yeah, that makes sense. I mean, obviously they'll probably put a little spin on it, but that's okay.
Right.
You're giving them the pieces of the puzzle, right?
Right.
If you just give them facts, they'll probably not even bother. Maybe. Right. Too much work. Wait a minute. This is easy. I figured it out. If you ever want to know what a person's going to do, they're going to do the thing that is the least amount of work or effort. Oh, is there a way that I can do nothing? Oh, do nothing.
Right.
Yes. Okay. That's the first thing they want to do. Psychology 101. Anyway, So, okay, cool. So let's talk about this 1998 story about how your friend had won an award and you're already working in PR world, right?
Right.
And he says, "Hey, I won this award. I want to tell the world and share it. And what's that going to cost me?" And the answer was not great.
No. He had called around, and there wasn't really anybody that would write a press release and send it a la carte. And they were all like, "Oh, we'll work with you, sign a contract here," and quoted anywhere from 10 grand to 20 grand at various places. And so I just said, "Hey, I can take what I've learned and help these people and get their message out for substantially cheaper." Right. And that's sort of what gave me the impetus to start eReleases.
Right. And it worked.
Absolutely.
So, describe how, so you basically, it's almost like you're like a T-Mobile, but with like the second tier, right? It's like those guys all have their towers and you're borrowing the towers, so to speak. I'm using a metaphor here, but it's kind of like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I know you talked about it a little bit, but give us a little bit more nuts and bolts about, like, if I were to sign up and get a plan, like what would I be buying into?
Right. So we sort of work a la carte through distribution. And so if you sign up for a new customer special, we have a link to that in the footer of our website. It's $349 to move a press release out. We offer writing. But I tell people, press releases aren't rocket science. You could write your own. We have links to samples in the footer as well as some other resources and things like that. And we'll take a look at a press release that you have, before you've even ordered. Just let us, give us a couple of business days to get back to you with any suggestions or anything like that. But I do believe that most people are capable of writing a press release. And if not, they can lean on AI to help writing it.
Oh, nice.
Just don't let AI choose what you're going to write about.
True.
97% of press releases that get issued don't get earned media. And AI has been trained on all the releases that are out there. So it will give you an idea of a release that looks good, looks like a lot of other releases out there, because it's exactly like other releases out there. But you should be focusing on the types of releases that get picked up.
Right.
And I have a complete free masterclass that goes through those 3% of press releases, what they are. And you should be able to use several of those models A4 press release for yourself. And if anybody's interested who's listening, it's a great place to start. And it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, and completely free. It's less than an hour long video masterclass, and it'll really get you a great education on the types of releases you should be considering.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, AI is great. I will say that it's amazing and you can learn stuff, but you're right. It's sort of like you have to remember the garbage in, garbage out. It's
been trained on everything that's out there,
and garbage.
Yes. And that's why it doesn't write good poetry either. I feel like my poetry job's still safe for now.
That's good to know. That's good to know. So let's talk about that. So you still like spend your Monday nights writing poetry. What's that like? You just have like a group of folks that you get together with on Monday nights and
I do. We do it by Zoom now. We sort of started that during the pandemic, and it's just worked out that that's convenient for everybody's lives now. And so, we usually write something, send it to everybody, and then we critique it and go over it on Monday nights. I have been actively writing the last 4 or 5 years and mostly editing. And so I have a book that'll come out in February of 2026.
Oh, wow.
So a bit down the road, my first book of poetry. And I'm shopping my second book around with publishers now. And hopefully I'll have it picked up maybe, towards the middle of this year. But there's long publishing schedules with small presses that generally make up the poetry world. So that's why it takes a while.
I can imagine. So what sort of topics are you writing poetry about?
So mostly I write about family, trauma, loss, things like that. So, yeah.
Not the romantic kind of love then.
I mean, there's some of that. There's room for some of that, but there's a lot of stuff.
Oof, yikes. Yeah. That's the meat and potatoes. That's where you get like the real, I don't want to say good.
Right.
But the juicy, right?
Yes.
It is. That's, if you want to pull heartstrings, that trauma and loss is where you're going. Yeah. So, okay. So talk a little bit about your interest in British science fiction.
Well, I think when I was young, around probably the 5th grade, we got a knock on the door. Wow. And a couple of guys appeared and said, "Hey, we're from Raleigh," which is the big capital in North Carolina.
Okay.
And they said, "We've got this little round antenna, and if you let us put it on the back of your TV, you'll get this public TV that we're broadcasting now."
Wow.
And it's very educational. And so they put that on there. And the first thing I did was I discovered they would have old reruns of Doctor Who. And so I became addicted to watching Doctor Who
Benny Hill.
And Are You Being Served was another good one. Monty Python's
Holy Grail. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, all of that stuff.
The first time I saw Benny Hill, I don't think British people watch Benny Hill. But anyway, that was there. It was another
I feel like if you watch 10 minutes of him, you've seen everything.
Yeah, totally. But Monty Python's amazing. Yes. And somebody said Monty Python is too highbrow for me. And I'm like, oh no, it is not. It can be. There are moments. I think what it is this perfect unicorn of very, very lowbrow and just a thin veneer of highbrow on top.
Sure.
So did you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or did I get that completely wrong?
I did. I read most science fiction stuff growing up. I didn't read the serious literature until I got to college.
Good for you. So are you a fan then of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I am. I think it's a little cerebral, more cerebral than some of the other stuff, but I appreciated it. I have yet to see a movie that I feel really captures it perfectly.
I don't think you're going to see a movie that, no.
Yeah.
There's too much stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like whenever you try to do a movie adaptation, you have to be really careful because it's really hard to nail that, I think. It's pretty rare, Right. Yeah, all the movies. And it also was so many different things. I mean, it was a radio drama. It was what? I think they even did a live thing, right? I know there was a radio show. There was books that started from the radio show. So yeah, it's changed.
Sure.
But what I like about it is the philosophy. And also it's like, I've got like I think I bought like what do they call it? Like a compilation book, like one book with 4 of them in there, 4 of the books in one volume. And then I found there was another one with 5. So first it was the 4-book trilogy, and now it's a 5-book trilogy. So they're all good and really good, very rereadable in my mind. Yeah. And you miss things. Like I miss so many things that on rereads, it's like, oh my God, that's so much more funny.
Right.
Because the first time I read it, I was just sort of like skimming and like getting like the very, very surface level of what's going on and like missing most of it. And now I think I get like some of the gags. I'm not that smart. Anyway, okay. So, all right. You have 2 cats that feud.
Yeah.
Do you have to keep them apart?
I know, but every once in a while they just sort of bristle, and they prefer their little lives separate for the most part. Sometimes you can have them in the same room and they just tolerate each other, but that's about it.
They just kind of like toss evil glances at each other.
Yeah, and then once in a while, for whatever reason, they just decide they want to fight a little, and it's like, oh, the
Really?
sounds they make.
Yeah, I've heard that. 2 cats fighting. Yes. Did you ever see were you a fan of the TV show Mythbusters?
Yes, I loved it. Yes. I was sad to hear over the years that they weren't really friendly. They never really talked outside of the show.
Right.
They didn't hate each other, but they weren't really friends.
Not friends.
I always had the feeling these are 2 pals.
I would say friendly-ish.
Right.
But I think they also annoyed each other.
Okay.
And they like to screw with each other, which is a thing, that friends do. But that can go a little too deep sometimes, I think.
Sure.
But yes, I think they tolerated each other. They're kind of like your cats.
Yep.
But they did this episode where they were trying to test the theory of herding cats. You can't herd cats. So they actually went and got like, what was that? What's the famous dog? Oh, Border Collie, right? A Border Collie will literally herd anything. Like if you put it in a room with like toddlers, they'll herd the toddlers. They'll make sure the toddlers don't go too far off a blanket, So they put this poor Border Collie in this big gymnasium full of like 12 cats. And immediately all of the cats were like, their backs were up in the air and they were like, hissing. And they did not move. And whenever that collie got anywhere near him, he got a nose full of claw. So I just, felt bad for the dog. But they proved the myth, can't herd cats. Therefore, it's a really good metaphor for trying to do something really difficult.
Yeah. Or near impossible.
Near impossible. Well, I think one of my supervisors while I was in the Air Force said, he gave me this thing and he forgot about it. And he's like, where are you at on this thing? And I'm like, well, there's this guy and I got to get him this to this meeting. And he says, oh, okay. You're herding cats. Got it.
Right.
So, okay, great. So, hey, this has been a blast. So let's talk a little bit more about how folks can get in touch with Mickie Kennedy over there at eReleases.com.
So our website's eReleases.com. All of our social media is on the lower right. It goes to my LinkedIn directly.
Nice.
That's a great place to interact with me because it's one of the few social medias I understand. And
there you go. And you can't doom scroll on LinkedIn as far as I know.
No. Yeah, and you can interact with our staff via email or chat or call. And you'll only talk to editors. We have no salespeople. There's no sales quotas or commissions. We're pretty honest and upfront if we feel you're a good fit for PR or not. There are some industries that don't. Like if you're in crypto, we're not a good fit. If you're in alternative health and you're making health claims, unfortunately, the newswire is not going to run the release. So we're not a good fit there either.
Right. Okay. There's probably a handful of things that just don't really fit. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Mickie, this has been a blast. Thanks for sharing stories about things not necessarily related to eReleases.
You're very welcome.
With Vroom Vroom Veer. Thank you.
Right.
You have a good one. Talk to you later.
You too. Take care.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.